My name's Jamey Welch. I'm a senior art director at the MTV Entertainment Group. Specifically, I work on some of the networks for them, which are Comedy Central, the Paramount Network, and TV Land. My job is to create, design, and oversee what we call the key art for the shows on those networks. The key art or the poster art is oftentimes seen what you see on a billboard or on a poster in a subway, and even the thumbnails that you see when you're on your Apple TV or your Netflix. We are responsible for creating that art. Some of the shows that I work on for these networks include The Daily Show with Trevor Noah, South Park, the Comedy Central Roasts, Broad City, Key and Peele, Younger, and most recently, Aquafina is Nora from Queens. Basically, our job is we are visual problem solvers. So we have to try to figure out how to get people's attention to recognize our show and be curious about it enough to watch it. And then hopefully the show will be something that they find funny or interesting to keep watching, and we'll have done our job because we got people to show up and watch. The steps that I took to get to where I am today, I've been doing this for over 2 decades. I got a degree from the University of Kansas in visual communications. I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts, which is basically a fancy way of saying I have a degree in graphic design. I started out learning how to be a graphic designer, which is about how to visually organize typography, which is, fonts, words, and imagery together, which is how we create the art for what we do, creating interesting photography, working with photographers to capture images of the people in the talent, is what they're called, the actors on the show, and then using typography and designing these posters that then get printed and put up, like I said, in billboards or in the subways, or as you see in digital ads when you're on websites, and then also the thumbnails that you see on Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, Apple TV, and so forth. After I graduated, I graduated from the University of Kansas. I started working at various companies, not in entertainment at first. Actually, I worked in what's called retail or luxury brands. Some of the brands that I worked for were Neiman Marcus was the first brand, and then I moved to New York and started working for brands that were based in New York City, specifically Tiffany & Company, Sephora, and this job, which I've now had for over 11 years. And when I started, I was a senior designer, and then I became an art director, and now I'm senior art director. So a typical day for me oftentimes is, depending on where I am in a project, just keeping that project moving. We work with deadlines that are based on when a show is premiering. So let's say a show is premiering on June 15th. So we would back up from that and start to work on concepts, and then share those concepts with other creative people in our company, and then eventually share those ideas with the show itself. And if they buy into it, then we would work on setting up a day to capture images of them with photography and video, and then take all of those what are called assets, back to our computers and start to design all the things that are needed to promote the show. Particularly for our team, it's all of the still art or the key art for that particular campaign. And our marketing team will buy certain placements around the country. And so we have to design things for different sizes. So we may have a billboard that's really, really wide, and then we may have a bus shelter that's really, really tall. So we have to take that artwork and design it in different sizes and places. So sometimes I'm designing the artwork, sometimes a designer is working with me and I'm art directing them. So they're doing the design and showing it to me, and then I'm giving them feedback about how they can make it better or try some different things to maybe make it feel a little more unusual or eye-catching. Sometimes it's designing things myself, and sometimes it's having a brainstorm with other members of our team. So coming up with ideas is a big part of what we do. So we are sort of at various stages being creative in different ways. All day, every day is what we do, which makes my job really fun. I think what I love most about my job is being able to like come up with an idea and then actually make it happen. So I may have an idea about like we worked on this show called The Other Two, and it was about a family where the youngest member of the family became like a very big star, and the other two members of the family, who were an older brother and sister, they weren't as famous. So that's kind of like them dealing with the fame of their younger brother, who's kind of like a Justin Bieber type. And so we came up with all of these ideas about how do we show that this show is about these two older people while they're kind of like standing in the shadows of this famous younger sibling. And I came up with this idea, like, what if they were in the limo with their younger brother, and you saw him but you didn't see all of him, and you really saw them kind of sitting there, and he was like standing, you know, up in the sunroof with all of his fans around. And the show liked the idea, and so flash forward a few months later, I'm in the back of a limo with a photographer, and we're capturing images of the two leads on the show, and the younger brother is standing in the limo, and that's what became the poster art and the key art. So, you know, that was really exciting to see. That happens a lot with my job, which is really fun, to be walking down the street and see my work out in the world. In terms of the skills that I think are necessary for my job, I would say communication is probably one of the most important things. I have to be able to visually communicate what I do. I also have to be able to problem solve all the different sizes and formats that we have to design things in. We oftentimes are given logos that the show has already created, so how do we integrate that? I also have to be, what we do is very subjective. So what I like may not be what my boss or my manager likes, or what the show envisioned. And so it's being able to work back and forth with them to come up with an idea that everybody is happy with and feels like is a good way to market the show, but also presents the show in a way that everyone agrees is a good, you know, direction. I also think it's important, obviously, to have skills in graphic design, so that you visually understand how to organize things, how to work with. We work in the Adobe Creative Suite. The main programs that designers in my field use are Photoshop, Adobe Illustrator, Adobe InDesign. I would say those are the main ones that we use the most. So having a knowledge or being trained in how to use those programs so they become a second nature is very important for the work that we do. I think the biggest challenges with my job is having to take everyone's feedback and thoughts about my designs into consideration. Because there are what we call a lot of cooks in the kitchen. A lot of people have an opinion about what something should look like, and balancing that and negotiating that can be challenging because internally, you know, everybody that works at the company may say, "Oh, we think this design looks great," but then you show it to the people that work at the show who make the show, they may think differently, and so it can be challenging to navigate what I think is right, what our team thinks is right, and what the show thinks is right. So coming to that consensus can be challenging and may take a bit of a back and forth and a lot of communicating. And so yeah, that can be, I would say that's probably the most challenging thing. I think my biggest advice for somebody who wants to be an art director or a graphic designer is to learn about those skills. And I think going to college or a school of art for that kind of thing is really invaluable. So I definitely would recommend going to college for fine art, for design, and not only taking design classes, but also taking other kinds of art classes. I know that when I was in college, they required us to take a life drawing class where we're drawing figures, models who were in front of us. We had to take color theory classes about what happens when you have certain colors next to each other and what that does to the eye. I also took pottery classes. I learned how to throw pottery because I just really enjoyed that. So screen printing, I took a screen printing class because that to me was kind of the original way that posters were made. So really a wide variety of art classes I think is really important to being a good designer, because all of those skills come into play when you're working as a graphic designer or as an art director directing other people's designs. I would say in terms of classes that I took in middle school and high school that really helped me were my art classes. We had a really good art program at our school, and so I took pottery classes. I learned how to throw pottery. We had some design classes on the computer at the time, and that was really beneficial. I think if you're interested in like yearbook, like working on the yearbook or anything like that, that's a great outlet, because you're working with photographs, you're working with typography and design, and creating this thing that will eventually be printed and given out. I think the last thing I'd like to share is that the great thing about graphic design is that it's everywhere, and it's in every possible interest that you may have. So if you're interested in sports, there are graphic designers who work with sports teams and franchises. If you're interested in fashion, there's plenty of graphic design to do for in the fashion industry. If you're interested in entertainment, obviously there's tons of graphic design opportunities. If you like TV or movies or anything you can think of, there's a graphic design element to that in some form or another. So the possibilities are really limitless, which is a pretty cool thing about this job. Thank you so much for listening today. If you're interested in learning more about the work I do, you can find me at jameywelch.com. That's JAMEYWELCH.com. And good luck with the rest of your career day.